Hey you guys, this is your boy Pickle Rick back in the building. Coming at you with another great engineer Archon build video. This is going to be the breakdown video of what I was using in the post patch, the recent post patch. And we're gonna jump right into it. We're gonna make this quick and simple. So I'm using Engineer Archon. Engineer is my primary archetype. One main reason when you when your engineer is your prime archetype, holding down the skill button will overclock your turret. The turret I'm using is the first skill turret. I think it's the best turret out of the three. The other two you really have to just hold in your hands and to get the most out of them. This build ain't about holding your turret. It's all about setting it down, overclocking it, and let it do damage for you. This whole build is designed to do burst damage with your skills as frequent and often as possible. So then, the reason why we're using engineer is because it increases skill damage by 50% and skill critical chance by 10%. Engineer is going to give you the most bang for your buck in your prime archetype. Plus, you have a turret that does damage for you on the side while you get the rest of your build set up in the middle of these boss fights. Now, the secondary archetype, of course, is going to be Archon with Havoc. Havoc is pretty much you're gonna be like Emperor Palpatine around here, and you're gonna be shocking everything in your path. Fun, fun build to use. You could dip, dodge in this form. It's pretty awesome. It's like your own little super in this game. I love it a lot. This build is really fun. So I'm using Leto's armor. I'm using heavy armor set, to keep me alive, keep me stable, make sure I'm able to take most hits, tank most hits, and still be alive. You're not gonna tank one shots. This is not a tank build at all. I'm just using heavy armor. You can honestly use whatever armor you feel like using if you feel more comfortable around that. But I use heavy armor because I'm not the best at dodging. And your two main relics I switch between in this build is going to be the Tranquil Heart for the passive healing regeneration over time, and the Shield of Heart. All depends on my area, where am I exploring, and what boss I'm fighting. So these are the only two relics I switch between on this build specifically. And as for my fragments, these fragments never change except the bottom one, which is skill duration. The only time I change out skill duration is going to be for, where's it at? Healing effectiveness. And that's also for very specific bosses because of the way they attack or how aggressive they are. That's the only time I change that, where I need my health regen to come back to me as quickly as possible because of the aggressiveness of the boss or how much they spam in their attacks. And I need to be able to get my health back as quickly as possible before he spams the next attack and actually kills me. This build, there's no second chances. There's no way to bring yourself back alive unless you're using one of these fruits from the Thane Seed tree that you planted in your garden. You eat one of these before a boss fight, and if you go down, then boom, you come back to life. That's the only way to come back to life. And in all my boss fights, if you see, I had it on me, but I never once used it. So then, we're going this build to help you show. Oh yeah, we're gonna go into the weapons. Number one weapon I'm always using for this build is going to be Merciless with Twisted Wounds for damage over time. Applies 2 times bleed. I can't recommend this gun enough. If you don't have it, go get this gun. If you don't have that mutator, go get this mutator. This gun is so OP. You just apply the bleed times 2. You run away. You let that bad boy do his job. There's only 2 enemies in the game I know if you cannot apply bleed to. That is the Phantom Ghost from Narud and the Rocks from the Labyrinth. Those are the only 2 enemies you can apply bleed to that I know of. Now, as melee weapon doesn't matter. Now, the only time I switch out my handgun from Enigma, and when I use Enigma, the mutator I always use on it is Time Slow. Time Wave, where when I start shocking these enemies, it'll slow them down and keep them in place, or at least give me breathing time if I need to pop a relic really quick, or I need to run away to, get some DPS in, or get some healing over time in, or set up my turret again real quick. That time wave gives you a lot of breathing room. I can't recommend that mutator enough, especially in Apocalypse difficulty. The only time I switch out Enigma is going to be the Nebula, and I'm still going to use the time wave mutator just to give me that breathing room on some of these enemies, because some of these enemies are extremely aggressive. And the only time I switch it out Enigma for Nebula is more so for bosses who have like ads, bosses who spawn ads. For example, to Rotha's physical form, he likes to spawn zombies in his arena. So I would switch out Enigma for Nebula, pop the mod, it spawns like these little ghost familiars. They'll go chase out the zombies. They'll start attacking them, slowing them down. That gives you breathing room to set up your turret again, apply bleed until Rotha, and keep your eyes on the boss. Because the boss, every boss in the game has one tap abilities, especially in Apocalypse difficulty. You want to keep your eyes on the boss. You want to know where the boss is at all times. So that's the only time I switch out Enigma. If I'm not using, so we're gonna get into the Amulet. Amulet, I'm using Jester's Bell. For the rings, I'm using a Black Pawn Stamp, Bright Steel Ring, because I could still have a fast invade window. If you don't have the Bright Steel Ring, which I highly recommend you wait until you get, but if you're kind of impatient and you want to use this build because it looks fun to you, and you don't have the Bright Steel Ring, what I would do is I would switch out Bright Steel Ring for Grounding Stone, and then you could change out your Amulet from the Jester's Bell to the Lettle's Amulet. Now from there you can still have heavy armor, and you can still have a decent roll speed, and your DPS is still going to be good. It's not going to be as strong with Jester's Bell. It's going to be off by like 4 or 5k. So with the original build setup, you're going to be hitting anywhere between 29-30k. And then if you don't have the Bright Steel Ring and you gotta switch it out for Grounding Stone and Lettle's Amulet, you're going to hit between 24 to 25k. So you're gonna be off by like 5 or 4k. It's not bad. So you're only gonna be off. Yeah, you're only gonna be off by like 4 or 5k. It's not like you're gonna be off by a whole 10, 15k. So the DPS, the burst DPS for this build is still going to be there. Now, while you have all these items, this is the build that I really highly recommend you keep or get set up for before you go out there with. The next ring is going to be Sapphire Dreamstone. What that does is critical hits reduce skill cooldown by 3%, can only happen once every 2 seconds. When they did the fix on Archon, once every 2 seconds, it's going to happen very, very frequently. Very frequently. You'd be surprised, especially when it comes to Nightmare Apocalypse difficulty. Most of these bosses, unless you're running a double DPS spell, which is Hugged, you're not going to be melting these bosses in 1 or 2 minutes. Most of your boss fights are going to last anywhere between 5 to 10 to 12 minutes, depending on the boss and how much he spans and if that boss has damage phases in between. So most of your boss fights are going to be lasting anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes. The last ring is going to be the Stone Continuous. That is going to increase your skill duration by additional 25%. Now, most of the time, for the majority of bosses, I do keep this. Where's the skill duration? This is the main setup for the majority of bosses, but certain bosses, I do switch out the Shield of Heart for. So we're going to get into the fan stats, and this is what I'm usually rocking with. My total damage reduction ain't too high, it's at 66. My armor, 62. Mod cost 15, skill cooldowns 40%, skill duration 40%, critical damage most of it's 50s, and skill crit chance 10%, healing effectiveness 40%, movement speed 15%. So those are my advanced stats, just so you guys can see. Here are my traits. My traits, always, these are going, my 4 traits, my 4 mandatory traits, especially in Nightmare. Oh no, actually my 5 mandatory traits, especially in Nightmare and Apocalypse difficulty, is going to be swiftness. Number 1, swiftness. Movement is key to staying alive. You have to be able to get away from the enemy when they start spamming attacks. You have to be able to dodge, run away from mats, whatever the time being is. You have to get away. You can't just sit there and tank with this build. You just have to place, get set up, get in your Havoc form, do burst DPS. Once you run out, get away. Get away, let your skills cool down, use your weapons to do damage over time. So swiftness, swiftness, swiftness. You want to have that maxed out. If you don't have this trait card, I suggest you beat the game on the easiest difficulty. Unlock Explorer class, max out Explorer to level 10, so you get the swiftness trait card. Now my next tool is going to be mandatory. Vigor, max out, which is your health. Endurance for stamina, that's another mandatory one. And then your other two I mandate at all times, specifically for this build, is expertise, because you want to get your skill cooled down as much as possible. The next one is going to be regrowth. Regrowth is going to help a lot with your tranquil heart, and for those certain boss fights, when I'm not using tranquil heart, I'm using shielded heart. Remember, shielded heart does not heal you; it just provides that overshield. So while you have the overshield, you regrowth is going to help you get your health back while you're running away or getting set up again. While you have the overshield, while you can tank 1 or 2 hits with that overshield. So regrowth is going to be another mandated one. Fortify is going to come automatically because we're using the engineer class, so we already have armor effectiveness. Me personally, I maxed out bark skin for damage reduction. And then your last two traits, you can put them on whatever you want. You can go amplitude or something else, but I did bark skin for apocalypse damage reduction, and I did 8 in triage, and I did 2 in untouchable. Normally I don't ever use untouchable ever because I think it's kind of useless if you just time your dodges, but I don't know what happened this most recent patch. I felt like the bosses were landing more and more hits on me, and it made it more difficult for me to dodge. So I put 2 points in untouchable, and I seen the difference through this apocalypse run, while I was getting hit a lot less often since I invested 2 points into untouchable. I don't know if it's a bug or something, or maybe I'm just getting, or am I just not as good as I used to be, or I'm not as good as I thought at dodging. But I put 2 points in untouchable just to make me feel safer. So those are my traits. That was the build breakdown. I hope you guys enjoyed this breakdown video, and you guys have a great one. I'm about to try to Archon cheese this nigga. Oh my god, my own turret fucking me up. Why are you swinging a fucking sword, damn it? Come on, Archon, come on. Nah, I'm using it to kill the stone statue, so I got time to do DPS. I already almost got me to dead. No way. Yeah, baby, double bleed, suck that ass.